Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really profound idea from the Bhagavad Gita, one that pretty much turns our modern concepts of wealth and success completely on their head. It argues that what we get in life, well, it isn't meant to stop with us. It's supposed to flow through us. So let's just jump right into this because it's a provocative idea. We tend to think of theft as, actively taking something that isn't yours. But what if? What if not giving, just withholding what's supposed to be in circulation, is actually another form of taking? And this slide really nails the core difference. On the left, you've got possession. Think of it like a stagnant pond or a locked chest. On the right, you have circulation, a flowing river, a living, breathing ecosystem. You see, life itself, whether it's in nature or in an economy, it thrives on that constant flow. Possession, on the other hand, is basically a dead end. It stops the flow, and the moment that happens, value starts to decay. Okay, so how does the Gita actually set this up? Well, it's not just some nice little suggestion for a better life. It's presented as a fundamental law of a moral universe. This isn't about being charitable. This is about cosmic maintenance. Now, what's so fascinating about this is that last line. The text uses the Sanskrit word Stena, which means thief. And it's not talking about robbing a bank here. It's defining anyone who consumes resources without contributing back to the whole system as, karmically speaking, a thief. So here's the crucial point. This ancient idea of theft is way broader than our modern legal definition. You could be perfectly respectable, totally successful, and completely law-abiding by today's standards. But from this perspective, you could still be a Stena just by blocking the moral circulation of value. And this philosophy doesn't just give us a rule. It actually describes a whole self-sustaining system, a kind of cosmic moral economy, where prosperity is totally conditional on this principle of flow. It's like a giant feedback loop, and this next slide shows us how it's supposed to work. This really illustrates that flow beautifully. It all kicks off with karma, which here just means right action. That's the engine of the whole cycle. That action then fuels yajna, which is disciplined, selfless contribution. Think of it like putting energy back into the grid. And that contribution creates the right conditions, symbolized here as rain, for resources and nourishment to come about for everyone. It's a cycle, you see, not a one-way street. So the big takeaway here is that things like wealth and wisdom and opportunity, they aren't static possessions you just win and then hold on to. Nope, they are part of a dynamic, reciprocal process. And if you break your part of that chain, the entire system starts to get weaker. That cosmic cycle is a really powerful model, but the philosophy argues that when we break it, the consequences aren't just cosmic, they are deeply practical. Let's take a look at how this ancient idea of blockage shows up as three very recognizable problems in our world today. Okay, first up, hoarding knowledge. Knowledge is meant to clarify things, to empower people. But when it's hoarded, it becomes a tool for control, for creating hierarchy. It stops being this wonderful shared resource and turns into a kind of private property. Does any of this sound familiar? This kind of thing creates an intellectual scarcity. Innovation just slows to a crawl, trust completely erodes, and the people with access to the knowledge can start to think their privilege is actually merit, all while blaming others for not knowing what they were deliberately never taught. The second blockage is the misuse of wealth. In this worldview, wealth exists to stabilize and protect life. But the Gita is pretty clear. When enjoyment is totally detached from duty and responsibility, wealth doesn't lead to happiness. It leads to bondage. As you can see here, when wealth doesn't circulate responsibly to sustain the very ecosystem that created it, it actually stops being prosperity. It becomes concentrated risk. It turns inward on itself and starts to corrode the stability of the person holding it. And the third blockage happens with authority. Power that's meant for stewardship, for taking care of the system, instead becomes centralized and is used simply to control and dominate. And that just breaks the cycle of trust and reciprocity. So how does this all play out in the real world? Well, this ancient text gives us a great framework to analyze three really powerful case studies that are right in our own lives, in our families, our workplaces, and our institutions. This chart just lays out the consequences so starkly. In a family, when inheritance is treated like a prize to be won and consumed, instead of a responsibility to be stewarded, the result is always decline. In a workplace where knowledge is trapped at the very top, the result is burnout. And in an institution that flat out refuses accountability, the end result is a quiet, internal moral collapse. Now, you might be thinking the consequence for all this hoarding would be some kind of big, dramatic punishment. But this wisdom is clear that the karmic accounting isn't what you'd expect at all. It's something much more elegant. Yeah, it's not about a lightning bolt from the sky or some sudden, dramatic reversal of fortune. The process is actually way more subtle and, honestly, a lot more insidious than that. What happens instead is the system rots from the inside out. The person or the institution that hoards becomes brittle, fragile, and totally unable to adapt. The very success they were trying so desperately to protect becomes the source of their own fragility. So, those who hoard knowledge to protect their status, they just find themselves isolated and unable to adapt when, not if, but when conditions inevitably change. Their precious expertise becomes nothing more than a relic. Those who misuse wealth to hoard security find out that their fortress of money offers zero real protection when a crisis demands true stability, which, by the way, only comes from strong relationships and a healthy system. And ultimately, all blockers of circulation discover the same thing. They have no real support network. Because they broke the cycle of reciprocity, there's just nothing there to flow back to them when they need it most. So here's the crucial point. Our role isn't to be a final destination for value, but to be a responsible conduit. Our job is to keep things moving, to receive, to strengthen, and then to pass on. That is how wisdom and prosperity are actually kept alive. And that leaves us with the ultimate question this ancient wisdom poses to every single one of us. Whether it's knowledge or resources or opportunity or just simple kindness, what has been entrusted to you, not for you to keep, but for its vital role in the flow?